Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for what I'm sure will be a fascinating webinar. Um, Today's a big one. Today we're exploring how the $6 trillion, which is a number I cannot possibly get my head around, the $6 trillion wellness industry could very well be putting the advancement of women's health at risk. So my name is Glenn Ferris. I'm the Managing Director of Healthcare Today, and I'm joined today by Dr. Lara Zibners. Lara is a board-certified pediatrician and pediatric emergency medicine specialist with more than 2 decades of experience in clinical practice and medical education. She's a writer, an entrepreneur, and the co-founder and co-chair of Calla Lily Clinical Care, and she sits at the forefront of initiatives in women's health innovation. Today, we'll be talking about the challenges faced by healthcare founders who have to compete with the fast-growing wellness industry for funding and asking if investors who are drawn to rapid returns promised by wellness startups, if they're ignoring the risks of funding that is often presented by often scientific and unregulated startups. A little bit of housekeeping. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the webinar, so please put any queries in the chat box as we go along, and let's get started. So I'm going to chuck a lot of questions at you, Lara. So,
Go for it.
please,
I put on a
please
leather
go.
blazer today, so I'm ready.
Very serious. So
Dressed up for you.
let's talk first a little bit about your credentials, not just as a pediatrician, educator, and author, but also as an innovator and a founder.
Well, as you and I have chatted before, my journey has been one of somewhat accidents and somewhat saying yes to everything because I started out as an emergency room pediatrician. I trained in the US. I was an attending in New York City, and I moved to the UK in 2006 because of life circumstances. And I then went on to start a family. Everyone who knows me knows I had a big infertility journey. I was a mom of three thanks to adoption and surrogacy. I was kept my foot in the medical door for a long time. I had a honorary consultant post at St. Mary's Hospital in London, and I eventually got a master's in medical education. I'm an educator at the Royal College of Surgeons. I do a lot of trauma education on an international level. And then I ended up going back to school when I was 50 for my MBA because I realized I had no life skills that really were going to help me outside of what I knew. I did my finances in Word. That's not a thing. So I went back to school, got my MBA at the University of North Carolina from Europe in the middle of the night, and then accidentally co-founded a healthcare startup. And the way that happened was I was an investor and advisor to the previous iteration of the company, which was a consumer women's healthcare period care product. And we decided to pivot into drug delivery. And I joined at that point as co-founder and chair. And since then, I have worked very, very hard to really use my credentials, my age, my lived patient experience to be a voice for women's health, using evidence and really a deep understanding of the clinical, the patient, the investor, the business, and the innovation sides of those.
Mhm. Let's start as we mean to go on with some quite eye-opening stats. Now, according to the Global Wellness Institute, the global women's health market is estimated to be worth around about 50 billion, while the unregulated global wellness industry is worth around about 6.2 trillion, um, which is astonishing. Can you talk a little bit about your own experiences of the gravitational pull of this wellness monolith on investor interest?
Yeah, but first I'll let you know that in that global wellness market, the UK ranks fifth in the world and second in Europe. So you guys really like your chakra maps as much as anybody. I think, there's a difference between health and wellness. And I think we have to back up and just mention what those are and then talk about the rabbit hole that becomes wellness. Health is defined by the WHO as a complete state of physical, mental, social well being. And wellness is the pursuit of health. And that means that health has objective markers and wellness does not, because my pursuit of health does not look like your pursuit of health. Right? It's about what makes me feel good. It's about striving for those end goals. And because wellness is appealing and it's not objective, it's alluring.
Hmm.
I will say that as a physician who should know better, I have fallen down the rabbit hole. I have spent more time than I care to admit to researching whether, pumpkin seed oil will really do for my scalp what minoxidil doesn't. Um, it's an extraordinarily appealing idea that we can shortcut our way to health,
Hmm.
and that's I understand that. And actually, not all things within wellness are a bad thing. Many of them are good. Like broccoli is great. Taking the stairs is super. Weightlifting is a great way to achieve health. But those things they don't show up in my Google ads.
Well, but in terms of kind of like competing for funding, do you find that investors often conflate women's health with wellness?
100%. Investors, that's one of the challenges because, my company, we are a regulated industry. We have to go through the MHRA, the FDA, the EMA. We have to our ethical innovation like that takes a long time. The wellness industry is unregulated,
Mhm.
and within certain guardrails, they can't just claim to cure disease, but they can claim almost that, and they don't have to take the slow, painful pathway, which means it's faster returns. I think investors, especially those who lack a clinical background, can't always pick apart the fantasy from the reality. And returns without regulatory hurdles is mighty appealing.
I mean, how as an actual investor, this is going to sound bad, as a non-wellness, as a women's health innovator, entrepreneur, how can you navigate that? I mean, the promises of rapid scalable returns must be very hard to navigate to avoid.
It's interesting that fine line that sits between what is regulated and what you can say is an unregulated product creates a perverse incentive
Mm.
for many women's health companies to try to slide just under the regulatory pathway. Um, and that gets them to market faster, that gets them to consumers faster, but it also muddies the water. What we really need is innovation. So, we face that conversation sometimes ourselves. Just this has to be regulated, but we also have a dedicated microbiome lab, and that would be a pathway that we could go down a regulated pathway, or we could go faster to a direct to consumer pathway. And there's real positives and negatives to that. The problem is if you don't take the regulatory road, the consumer doesn't really know what the evidence is
Mm.
behind what you've got. So it does create an incentive for many companies to push to market first and get the evidence later if they can, because we're all just trying to survive, right? We are a pre-revenue company. I have these 7 PhDs at the office who all insist on a salary and food and lights and running water and fee, right? One
Disregard.
PhD is our office barista, right? I leave it to Arturo to make the matcha. Um, but we have a really big burn because we're actually a product with labs and scientists. And so it's really, really tempting to try to find a faster way to get some revenue through the door.
No, absolutely. Well, let's just move on to our second part here, was talking about understanding the funding gap. Now, last year, Calla Lily was backed by an additional 1.1 million in funding from the National Institute for Health and Care Research. Now, whilst that is a significant achievement, where we've spoken in the past, you've noted that the funding only just covers the cost of clinical trials, which is, a million doesn't go very far, as we know. But why is ethical medical product development so capital intensive?
Well, let's back up. Not only, I mean, we're very grateful for the support of the NIHR, but as I told you, we learned that we got that grant after multiple attempts. Mm, In February of 2024, we were allowed to announce it in April of 2025. And you don't even realize that that's how long it's going to take. And part of that was there was a election. Well, all conversations are halted. So it took us a very long time. And that's not even going to pay for our clinical trials. That's going to cover our initial 20-woman usability safety study that is starting hopefully this quarter in the NHS, country in Warwickshire. It's expensive because, I mean, just look at the paperwork to get through the FDA is on average $4 million. It's the paperwork, right? So you have to, it's not an option to hire what's called a clinical research organization, a CRO. You have to hire a CRO in order to oversee your trial so that the study will be accepted by the regulatory bodies, right? That is not cheap. That is six figures plus for the initial meetings, just to say this is our pathway. And then we've had two different meetings with the MHRA date that both have supported an accelerated pathway for initial progesterone product. But those require months of preparation with your CRO who are billing you hourly. And this whole time, my team is continuing to demand salaries.
I mean, I can't help you with that one. Actually, as we talk, you'll realize I can't help you with anything.
No, Glenn, I mean, I'm gonna appeal to the Americans. The penny's out of circulation. So if everyone could just send me their pennies, I could make a dent in this.
Okay, we'll see what we can do. Now, with private equity, it's still a predominantly male-led industry, as is venture capital. Does femtech, in your opinion, still struggle to be seen as mainstream healthcare as opposed to niche wellness?
1,000,000,000%. Mm, So we have managed thus far to not take institutional investment. And for those who don't understand the difference between, many startups start up with that friends and family initial funding, bootstrapping, tapping into your own pocket. And then the next stage is called angel investors. That's a level beyond. Those are typically high net worth people. In the US, you have to be an accredited investor. Um, and those are people who can, family offices, high net worth. And then there's a level beyond. Most companies will never get to scale without some kind of institutional investment, whether that's private equity or venture capital. That is a largely male dominated field.
Mhm.
Have never, ever heard a male investor on any other topic say, it's really interesting. I need to go home and ask my wife. Because they don't understand that it's even a problem. And then they can't relate to it. And my feeling is unless your wife is your investment advisor, I just told you we have a $22 million, billion-dollar market opportunity. That should be good enough for you. But it's a real challenge. I have spent a lot of time trying to relate vaginal drug delivery to something men understand, which is nasal drug delivery. Like most men have put either an illicit drug up their nose at some point.
It's a safe space
So
here.
they can understand mucosal drug absorption,
Yeah.
right? And then I'll say if nasal drugs leak the way vaginal drugs do, one of you would have done something about it.
Mm.
For sure, there is, and I think, and that really speaks to the issue with the wellness industry making noise. We're a $1 trillion industry. Currently, wellness is 6 trillion. Women's health specific is 50 billion. That is on track to double, triple in the next 10 years. And if you don't really understand the problem, then you cannot possibly break through the noise to see what is really going to move the needle for women's health and what is something that might make somebody feel good, but isn't actually going to change anything.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about just the hidden costs of building an ethical healthcare company. What are the most misunderstood or hidden costs in building a healthcare company that generalist investors simply don't see?
The generalist investors they don't understand our timeline. Something that is a real challenge too. We've managed to take some amazing investors on our journey with us, and some of them have experience in healthcare and pharma, and we have to tap into them to communicate with the ones that don't about our pace. We were supposed to start our in woman trial last summer, and we're hoping to start it next month. And that's not because we were off playing video games. Like we didn't just kick off to Barbados for 9 months. It's because we had to we had to send all the parts of our device for testing, and that has to be signed off. And then you get one result back, then you're not sure if that's spurious or not. So all these things take time. It was funny. We had some paperwork that had to be read carefully by two external team members, and we could send it somewhere, but that was going to be 6 to 8 weeks waiting. So in scrappy startup style, I cleared my calendar and did nothing but read these 800 pages for 2 days, as did somebody else in our office who wasn't involved in writing them. Like, we're doing everything we can to push forward, but you get an unexpected delay, and there's nothing you can really do about it because we are talking about patients.
Mhm.
Safety comes first. Because we're doing our first in woman trial in the NHS in a patient population that is recurrent miscarriage patients, that has to go through another trust ethical board for review. And that takes as long as it takes.
Mhm.
There's literally nothing you can do about it because it's about safety. Whereas if you have something that isn't going to be regulated and you're not going to do something obviously harmful to people, you can do it tomorrow. You can ask your friends. You can have people just write testimonials.
Yeah.
That's your regulatory pathway. Did you like this? Did it taste nice? Do you feel good? Yeah, there you go. Done.
Your experience spans both the US and European funding landscapes, so it's a fairly unique viewpoint. But from your perspective, what are the key differences in how investors from either side of the Atlantic approach women's health?
There's a lot of similarities. Mm, There are also some cultural differences. I think when we just look at medicine between the US and UK, because you're right, I have the privilege of having practiced medicine in both systems, which gives me a different lens than many of my UK and US colleagues. In the US, there is a huge medical legal point, and we have a very complicated reimbursement. So it's not enough to say my product works. It is, will it be reimbursed by the payers? What are the obstacles to integration into the various healthcare? Payer transparency is the most opaque thing ever. So they talk a lot about price transparency in the US, but it's complicated because there's kickbacks and there's deductions and there's so many different layers to it that I truly don't even understand it. Mm, That creates an environment where investors want to see, okay, do you have a product? Does it work? Who's paying for it? And that is slightly different in the UK because I think, and also culturally, Brits are accepting, I think, at times that there needs to be an element of societal price and patience in order to bring, help. And not to say that the UK system is not deeply broken and in need of money. I mean, my husband works for the NHS, and I hear every day from him, how difficult things are.
Mhm.
But I do think when you have a single payer or private, the questions we don't get asked, who's going to pay for this? We sometimes do, and it's, can people afford this if it's not in the NHS? And the answer is yes, we can make this affordable. But that's quite different because in the US, you have these huge markups. It's such a complicated reimbursement situation. So those are some slightly different conversations. Um, the other thing we have sometimes to face is um, it's a bigger country. And so there's different clinical practice everywhere. You find that investors in certain parts of the country are interested in certain even types of investment vehicles. All of our investment in the UK thus far in EIS eligible straight equity. We are on the same share class as everyone else that has invested in us. And we've done that because really we're lucky to be in the UK where we have this EIS scheme. And that, for those who don't know, this means an immediate rebate on your part of your investment against your taxes. It means some favorable tax upon return of your investment. So because we're eligible for that, and that creates an incentive for us to stay a UK entity because we would lose that status and we would have to reimburse the government, which I struggle just to pay my PhDs, let alone paying back Keir Starmer for the money they've given to us. But so that's great. In the US, you don't have that scheme. And so that people don't understand why we're raising straight equity. We've never raised on a convertible debt or a safe. And some parts of the country, that's what they want to raise on. Other parts want to raise in equity. You have to learn to speak the language kind of, and I guess the way you learn to do that is you start with lots of questions to figure out where the investor's coming from so you can give them the answers that will give make them give you money.
Yeah. Let's move on to building networks for change. Now, you have joined the Milken Institute's Women's Health Network. It's in the US, I believe it's in the UK as well. Is that correct?
So Milken Institute is a US based institute, and their Women's Health Network was announced last spring. It is chaired by Dr. Jill Biden, our former First Lady, and they are making it a global initiative. So
Mhm.
they were in London this week, and I was there, managed to get my money shot selfie with Dr. Biden and some other founders in the UK. And I got into that network. I got into that network and learned about it because they made the announcement last spring, but I thought that's something that, the American Heart Association is going to be part of, not little old Lara. Then I went to a Women's Health Day at my alma mater, Ohio State, where I went to medical school, did all my peds emergency medicine training. And I was there for Women's Health Day, and that was the day OSU announced their entry into Milken, the Women's Health Network. And I learned much more about it then and was invited to apply.
Mhm.
And so we were admitted as one of the few startups. And because what Milken's doing with this network is they are trying to really break down all the silos so that everybody has a seat at the table. So there are innovators, there are payers, there are investors, there are the leadership from the American Cancer Association, American Heart Association, top voices in women's health. Um, we're all in the same room together. I had the privilege of going to the inaugural luncheon in November in DC, and it was a big room. And they said at lunch, don't sit with somebody you know. Sit with
Mhm.
somebody you've never talked to who is in a completely different area than you, because the only way we're really going to create change is if we go all around the world and we include voices in every different environment with every different, every environment has its own set of obstacles. And we need to make sure everybody's listening. And it was a huge mm, it was a huge vote of confidence for what we're doing, and my work to keep paying those pesky scientists, because we're working so hard. I've never done anything this hard in my life.
Mhm.
Honestly, I have been to medical school, I've done trauma surgery rotations, I've been to business school in the middle of the night. Nothing prepared me quite as much, like, all prepared me, but this is the hardest thing I've ever done. So to have them invite me to sit at that table and talk to some of these CEOs of these huge organizations and share our struggles and find solutions together, pretty extraordinary. And I will also say, um, Dr. Biden, I thought she's putting her name to this, but she wouldn't be there. She's been in every room and is, you know, I think the political landscape is what it is, but to see people taking it seriously enough that they are present in the room with people at every level of this ecosystem, I think really speaks to the commitment to women's health.
Absolutely. I mean, that leads me very nicely on to my next question, because the key theme in your work up until now, and obviously now exacerbated by the Milken Institute, is breaking down silos between clinicians, founders, regulators, investors. Can you talk a little bit about experiences that you've had when bridging those gaps was particularly crucial for the success and progress of Calla Lily?
That's it's really interesting. When I started this journey, I assumed everybody was in it for the right reasons. Now bitter and scarred and battled. I mean, there are a lot of people who are here for, at the end of the day, everyone has to look out for their own self-interest. There are a lot of power dynamics that go on in this industry. Investors, interestingly, a lot of investors in women's health, they're struggling to raise money to invest themselves. And so when you're all siloed and you're looking at the other group, you don't, you think they've just got all this money and why aren't they giving it to me? And when we start to, as we've worked so hard to develop our profile, I've worked to create a platform for myself, leader in this space. I hate to say it, but you start getting more respect from people in the other silo. And then suddenly they're willing to talk to you because there's this power dynamic where, I've been made to feel at times like I'm back in high school. Like
Hmm.
I'm this 15-year-old kid who isn't worthy of the attention of some 35-year-old investment professional. And that was a shock to me that I could go back to that. And it's because of how it's set up. It's because we need the funding so badly. They may or may not have the funding. And you want the money. And
Hmm.
that sets up a tendency to create a power dynamic between investors and founders that is not fair. And I went to one program in Philadelphia where the first thing they said was, "You are all equal." And we had 6 investors in residence, and we had 10 startups, and they put us in the same room, all sitting together, all sharing our meals. We were having nice wine and sushi in the evening, not like soda and orange, orange soda and fries. And it was the first time that somebody had said, you don't need to grovel to conversation. And that's part of what I've learned. And I'm trying, I also am an active angel investor myself. I have my own portfolio of companies, and I'm very mindful about that. So I try to take my founders, and as I speak to other founders, you have to be, we all need to be respectful of one another. Isn't This isn't a game. This is about for women. And that means health for society. All men come out of a woman. I hate to break it to you.
Well, this is how I find out. So thanks for sharing that with me.
I'm glad you need to go take a sip of water.
In front of all these people, I'll take a breath and a quiet time after this, just really kind of dilute that information. Anyway,
Soccer
um,
mat time.
big question time. So drawing
Okay.
from both your European context and your US network insights, what does a new, more effective blueprint for funding women's health look like?
I think we need to, what the point of our chat today was really to talk about threat from the wellness industry. And I think one of the first things we need to do is highlight investing in unproven, unregulated product is potentially dangerous. Right? Like that is not just money that you can skip away with for a thing. We've seen time and time again where products have been shown to harm people, where they've been shown to be making claims that are not valid. Um, and so I think investors need to understand that you need to do your homework, and you probably need to listen to people with they may not be the sexiest, most exciting people to talk to, but people with deep understanding of that field, and not just be swayed by celebrity and glitter and fancy pitch decks, because you're putting yourself at reputational and financial risk for backing something that later could be shown to best have done nothing people, and at worst have.
Absolutely. Now, as we know, the people with the loudest voices often have the least amount to say, whether that's people on social media or whether that is influencers or whether that's people in government. And I'm not going to get into that, but as a founder and a doctor and a female, you do sit at a unique intersection. How do you feel that the actual knowledge that you've accrued over these decades, your clinical background, how does that fuel both your mission and perhaps also expose you to the systemic gaps in women's healthcare that a non-clinical founder may or may not face?
Mm, absolutely. I have the benefit of being in my mid 50s with a lot of degrees. And so I can come out and say to a room full of men, because we're talking about male investors primarily, right? I can say, I'm a doctor and I have 2 master's degrees. Kindly sit down and listen to me.
Mhm.
And other women don't have advantage. And so I've spent a lot of time talking with other women in this space about imposter syndrome. And what I say is that if you have imposter syndrome, because to your point, women suffer more often from imposter syndrome. And what I say is imposter syndrome is just a self realization. Should I be talking about this? And if the answer is yes, continue to speak. Whereas we see a lot of, and I don't want to say just men, but to your people who talk and they don't think twice and they talk about something they don't have any understanding of. Right. I think where I've been able to, I really want to be the rising tide that lifts all the boats, so that I can identify the innovations that I think potential to really, move the needle, and use my platform and voice to give those founders and those innovations attention. I am on social media, and a lot of what I say is nonsense. Yesterday's post was about getting my eyebrows waxed. I'm on my way to meet Dr. Biden. So it was kind of a trade-off there. Do I or don't I? I'm going to be all red. But, um, exactly because of what you say, because I come with credibility, because I come with lived patient experience, and because I come as a mouthy, middle-aged menopausal woman, I can open doors.
Mhm.
And I try to leave those doors open long enough to take other people through with me.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to imposter syndrome, you don't get anyone who suffers imposter syndrome more than a journalist who talks to people who know exactly what they're talking about and have to hold court for a little while. So
But,
I at
but
least I at
no,
least get
but let's go right back.
that.
That's a self-realization. Hey, Glenn, have you have a history of conducting interviews with people on the red carpet even?
I do, yes.
You do, you know how to talk to people. You belong in the room, man.
Well, there you go. I'll take it. Okay, we're talking about let's do some role playing here. That I am the man in the room. I mean, I am a room full of VCs. I'm a room full of uh, uh, investors, and I probably look like every room you've ever walked into of investors. I mean, what's the single most important message that you want to deliver to me, the investment community, about the opportunity and the responsibility in funding true women's health innovation over wellness trends?
First off, we're calling out women's health because we have got to move the pendulum back to the middle because women were ignored for so long that we're calling out women's health and making a lot of noise about that. But that doesn't mean that we don't need men at the table. We need everyone at the table investing, innovating, and listening. Because, like I told you, and I know this is new news to you, but all men come out of women. And healthy women create healthy societies and they create global, like economic benefits. There is a global economic return on paying attention to the health of women. And when you invest, you're not only, it's not a charity. We're not saying let's invest so that we do good for the planet and that, some economy on the other side of the world that we've never heard of is going to prosper. It's your own pocket that
Mm.
is going to fill with money. I am not a charity. This is not a tax deductible donation. I'm not, Sunday morning at church. I'm going to make you a lot of money. I would need your help.
Take my cash now.
Great. I'll take your pennies.
Okay, I'll see what I can send over. I'm sure everyone here's sick of me wittering on. So, if there are any questions, please do put them in the chat and we'll aim to get to them. I will take this opportunity to get Lara to talk briefly about a strategic collaboration that you have just announced.
Did. We did
Right.
yesterday. The press release dropped. I can't say much more than Calla Lily. We have signed our first strategic collaboration, and that is with Merck, the original Merck EMD Serrano, as it's known in the US. We were under due diligence for 16 months because big pharma, and for those of you who don't know, Merck in Germany is the biggest, oldest women's healthcare pharma. And these companies don't move super fast. They don't meet you, fall in love, and write you a check. 16 months of due diligence, multiple meetings, multiple visits to our office. We signed an agreement in December um, that we can announce, but we can't tell you what it's for, how much it's
Okay.
for.
So,
But that's okay because I would rather leave that to your imagination. I mean, we are a vaginal drug delivery platform starting with progesterone, but we can deliver any vaginal therapeutic. And what most people don't realize is that vaginal therapeutics potentially go well beyond gynecologic conditions. Like the vaginal mucosa is part of our mucosal immune system. It's been studied in vaccine administration. It's the front line for HIV vaccine studies. It is, you can achieve systemic levels of painkillers. I found a case report in long morphine administration vaginally. Um, Anything that you don't want to have go through the gut and have first pass where the body metabolizes it, we could potentially deliver if it's the right kind of molecule vaginally. So I'll just open it up to your imagination as to what that collaboration could possibly be for. But it's extremely exciting for us because, as one person said when I said we've signed this deal, he said, "Oh, Merck doesn't fart around. You guys are good."
That's one of the benefits of the European side of things. If you get a German company, they'll get on it and get it done. So if nothing
Yeah,
else.
and they're not going to be like fluffy. It's not going to have like an American, oh, that was great. I'll never call you again kind of thing. They don't want to hear it. They're just going to slam the door in your face. So I mean, yesterday was a huge day for us. Huge.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very
We haven't
much.
had any questions popped up in the Q&A, so let me start to wrap things up. So yeah, thank you for joining us today, everybody. Thank you to Dr. Lara Zibners for sharing your invaluable knowledge and expertise. We do have a series of webinars running fortnightly from this point on. Our next one is on March the 4th, and it's featuring Lara's friend and colleague, Dr. Adam Brown, which
My
will explore
podcast partner,
your podcast partner. We'll be exploring
Unstable
how.
Vitals, like, subscribe, share. There's my plug.
That's how we work. We'll be exploring how trade tensions, US health policy shifts, and new global alliances are shaping patient access, workforce stability, and clinical decision making in the UK. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We have recorded this webinar. We will be sharing it. So if you missed anything, please do pop in again, ask us any questions. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day, and yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay.